NYU, and Mike Taylor, who's from Carnegie Mellon University, came all the way from Pittsburgh on a mega bus today, 8 hours to come join us. And we have a fourth colleague, George Thurston, who's at NYU Medicine. And so we're working on a project called the MyAirCastingHealth Challenge. So Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Health and Human Services, and the National Institute for Environmental Health Sciences sponsored a challenge, and they call it the MyAirCastingHealth Challenge. And what they wanted folks to do was measure one air quality parameter, at least, and one physiological parameter, and see if there was a relationship between the two. And do it using portable, possible low-cost sensors to keep track of this stuff. And so we put in a proposal, and we ended up being finalists. And so we're in the process of executing now, and we're looking to recruit people for a community health study where you will actually wear the sensors. There's a sensor here that's it's called the BioHarness 3, and it's by a company called Zephyr, so it's commercially available. It straps to your chest like this, actually like this I should say, because the sensor's on the side. And it measures, it's an ECG, so electrocardiogram. It also does breathing rate, and it has an accelerometer, so it can tell how active you are. And then Mike is going to talk more about a sensor package that he put together that measures particles, particulate matter, and carbon dioxide. And now I'm going to have Carlos explain kind of the heart rate variability and aspect of this project.
Okay, thank you. So just very briefly, as Michael said, the goal of our project is to assess the sort of current state of portable sensors for both air exposure or air pollution exposure, as well as some physiological or human health impact parameter. And so one of the things we thought of looking into was heart rate variability, which according to the literature review that we've done can be decreased by exposures to high levels of particulate matter. Fine particulate matter, which is basically any liquid or solid particles that are suspended in the air and that are smaller than 2.5 microns. Those are the ones that can penetrate deep into your lung, and that's where a lot of the regulatory effort in air quality is now made. And also carbon monoxide, which you probably all have a carbon monoxide alarm in your apartments. You're not going to be exposed to very high levels at ambient levels, but still we want to see if there's any kind of association between the exposures that you're likely to encounter of carbon monoxide and heart rate variability. So just in general, heart rate variability, it's good to have variation in terms of your heartbeats, because that says that when your body might need more oxygen in the blood, your heart will be more active. If you have reduced heart rate variability, then that can be a bad thing, in particular for people who suffer from heart disease and other vulnerable populations as well. So Michael and Mike will be talking to you more about what we hope to do with the community and the kinds of sensors that we'll be using as well.
So here in Newtown Creek, New York City, map of Newtown Creek showing all the there's a couple Superfund sites, state Superfund sites along the creek, CSO outfalls, just kind of showing you that there's a lot of environmental burdens in the community. And I want to go over the ones that are specific to air pollution. I'm not going to read everything on this slide, just the bold text. So 17-point source air emissions facilities. We have the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, the Long Island Expressway, designated city truck routes crisscross the neighborhood servicing places like the waste transfer stations, all the distribution and warehousing that happens in and around the creek. There's a lot of heavy truck traffic in and around the creek. If you ever hang out on Grand, Metropolitan, or Vandervoort during the day, especially in the morning or in the evening, just tons of trucks. Let's see, waste transfer stations, like I said, 19 of them, handling approximately 40% of all the city's waste. Buildings burning dirty heating oil, which is being cleaned up slowly. But some of them still burn number 4 and number 6, which is a thick sulfurous goop that you actually have to heat up before it becomes liquid. It's just like a goop. Off-grid electric generators. So not all the businesses around the creek can get enough electricity, so they run their own generators sometimes. The Greenpoint underground oil spill. There's a Mathis underground oil spill, which is less well publicized and less well known. There could be off-gassing from both of those. and off-gassing from the surface waters. Now, we're not going to be measuring, we're measuring carbon monoxide and nitrogen dioxide. A lot of the stuff that we're looking at here on this list is going to be volatile organic compounds, which we're not going to be measuring. But I wanted to include it just for the sake of being thorough. So a lot of environmental burdens that are related to air quality in and around Newtown Creek that are beyond what other neighborhoods are experiencing. And we want to co-produce evidence. So this is a citizen science meeting. We don't believe that we're going to get the same kind of measurements from this device as you would if you're sitting in the doctor's office having electrodes connected to your chest. We don't think that the instrument that Mike has created is going to give the same kind of accuracy and reliability that a federal reference instrument would that's sitting on top of a school taking measurements for the Department of Environmental Conservation. But we're looking to kind of fill in the gaps. And so we're looking at government and citizens making better use of each other's assets and resources to achieve better outcomes and improved efficiency. So looking at, our analysis will look to a certain extent at what's happening with the DEC monitoring stations when we're looking at our own data. So can we increase the spatial resolution of air quality data? There's only a few monitoring stations throughout New York City that are measuring PM and CO, and they're on top of buildings. So can we increase the spatial resolution of the data? And then secondly, can we look at it in real-world settings and scenarios and assess health impacts, right? So instead of measuring air quality on top of buildings, measure it at breathing zone and see if there's any impact in terms of human health, in terms of heart rate variability. And I'm going to hand it back over to Carl, who's going to talk about the community health study design.
Okay, so as Michael said, one of the things we hope to do with this project is assess the accuracy. We're going to be doing some calibration to see how accurate these portable sensors are. And then one of the great things about having portable devices is that rather than relying on a central monitoring station that may or may not say a lot about your own personal exposure to air pollution, by having people carry these devices around, we can get a much better sense of how a person's exposure to air pollution varies throughout their normal day activities or night activities or whatever. So we as researchers are going to be testing these devices and collecting data ourselves, but we also thought it'd be great to work with volunteers from the community who may want to carry these devices for a few hours a day, and then we can get a sense of how exposures might vary, like I said, throughout a normal work day or weekend day. And so that's one thing that we hope to do. We've put the project proposal through NYU's internal review board, and once we get their approval that we're doing everything correctly from a research ethics point of view, then sometime in April, I think that we would hope to work with community members who will, again, collect data for us and also tell us whether there are any issues in terms of comfort or other issues with sort of wearing these devices and what the experience would be like carrying them around for a few hours per day. And so again, Michael and Mike will tell you more about the specifics of the device.
I just want to jump in real quick. So we're looking to get 5 people, and we ask that you live within a mile of Newtown Creek, and that you live or work within a mile of Newtown Creek, and that you're physically active in the neighborhood. And then I'll hand it back to Mike.
So I'm Mike. I'm a PhD student at Carnegie Mellon. The Create Lab is part of the Robotics Institute, but we don't do robotics projects as you might sort of traditionally think of them. We tackle a variety of problems, one of which is that a lot of air quality and water quality monitoring devices are quite frankly outside of the range of most citizen science budgets. Take, for example, particulate matter sensors. Most off-the-shelf particulate matter sensors or particle counters cost upwards of $1,000. We have one in the lab that's $5,000, and some people will consider that low end. So our goal is to create something that doesn't necessarily match that device function for function, but is at least 1 to 2 orders of magnitude cheaper than what's currently on the market. So what we sort of started with was this little stationary particle counter that we developed. This is not the most recent iteration of it, but basically we're expecting to be able to sell this at cost for about $100, and this can sit inside your home and measure particulate counts from things like cooking and such. Its detection range is centered around 2 microns, so that's nicely within that 2.5 fine particulate range that we're looking at. Next one. So we sort of have some of that core technology in place, but in order to make it relevant to this project, we need to add a few things. Namely, we need to make it portable and wearable. We need to add the capability to measure carbon monoxide, and we also need it to communicate with the AirCasting app developed by Habitat Map for actually collecting this data and uploading it. So we need to add in Bluetooth connectivity into it as well. So basically, next slide. We took the previous device and we modified it a bit. This is just a prototype, but we'll have another half dozen to a dozen in the next few weeks. So that now instead of sitting on your desk, which I mean I guess we can still do, this one is actually designed to be wearable. It has a couple different modalities. You can clip it to a belt, clip it to a backpack strap. It's got a lanyard holder, like whatever works for you. And actually, we'd like to get some feedback on the form factor, if there's a different way that you would like to wear it. But basically, what this contains is the particulate sensor that we were using in the stationary monitor, as well as an electrochemical cell that measures carbon monoxide levels. This will communicate to a standard smartphone using Bluetooth. And in order to keep this light and as wearable as possible, so we're not like, basically like, you're not hunching forward with some huge battery, we are opting to use an external battery. This is the largest one we sell. We don't really expect you to carry around something this big in your pocket. But essentially you will, depending on how much power this thing consumes, you'll get a battery that's sort of appropriate to the usage that you expect. And you'll carry that around with you either in the backpack or in your pocket. And we'll have a lightweight tether to provide power to the device. So that's it for us. Oh, yes, and then I guess we talked a little bit about awareness already, so we're good.
All this data is going to be collected by AirCasting. So AirCasting is an Android app, and it's also a website. And so what happens is that the data from an AirCasting monitor, this is another strap made by Zephyr that just says heart rate, feeds into the Android app over Bluetooth, and then you can send the data to the AirCasting website. There's also a possibility of creating your own sensor package and sending it to your own server. So if you didn't want to use our platform, you could just use it as a way to log data. And this is what it looks like. And so when we first started, we were only doing sound levels because every phone has a microphone, and the number one complaint in New York City's 311 hotline is noise. Noisy neighbors, noisy airplanes, et cetera, et cetera. And so what it looks like is you're walking along, and every second a reading is taken. That varies depending on what the instrument is, because they have different averaging periods. Something like the ECG is electrocardiogram sampling multiple times a second. But it lays down a colored dot, and that dot color corresponds to the intensity of the reading at that location. We're looking at sound here for 20 to 60 decibels is quiet, green, 60 to 70, 71 to 80, etc. And then on this screen, you see that you not only see your trail, but underlying that you see the colored squares. And those colored squares are the averages of all the aircasters who have come through that area and taken reading. So you can see that in this instance, it's lining up pretty well. You're recording green, there's green in the background, yellow here, orange up there. And so it's a neat way to kind of keep track of your exposure to different environmental pollutants, or what your health parameters or what your heart rate was doing at a certain time. It graphs it also. On the left you can see a graph, so you not only have the map and what we call the crowd map, which is the aggregated readings, but then you have a graph, and then you have what we're calling the sensors dashboard, which shows you, one after another, all the different parameters that are coming into the phone. Saved, you can see on the left-hand side, so those are all your sessions. You can share it as a link, share it as a file, and then we're looking at the website. So when you get on the website, aircasting.org, you can select your parameter over here on the right. It shows up, you click on a square, and it tells you what the underlying data is, who the top contributors are, how many samples, et cetera, et cetera. You can see the graph again. You can make notes, so we have people make notes as they collect the data, and we'll be using that in our analysis. You can attach photos and notes. And it's all open source. And so that's an important part of this, is that we're doing this, and we have our own agenda, but it's something that you can take and you can adopt as you see fit. If you have programming skills, or you're part of a group that somebody does, you can readapt it. So that's the end. So if you're interested in serving as a volunteer, if you think you might know someone else who would be, please do get in touch with us. Come speak with us after the meeting, or you can email me at info@habitatmap.org if you want to find out more. Thanks for listening.